Okay, this is chapter 7 for middle and late, like roughly ages 6 to 11. We'll talk about physical changes, health. There's a whole bunch of things that we'll talk about here. The brain, exercise, children with ADHD, autism, cognitive changes. Again, talk about Piaget, information processing, and intelligence. The brain volume begins to stabilize. There are still going to be changes in structures and regions, especially in the prefrontal cortex. And we've talked about this several times now. This is where the executive function is. Super important for things like self-regulation, planning, things like that. Activation of some brain areas increase during this time, while in other areas it begins to decrease. And this is the synaptic pruning that we talked about a few chapters ago. The idea that you use it or lose it. If you don't do something, you're not going to build that synaptic pathway. And pathways, things that you do are going to build a pathway. That synaptic pathway is going to become stronger. Where I'm going with this is that if you engage in good habits here, when you're like 6, 7, 8, it's going to create a strong pathway that will last you for the rest of your life. So if you're good with, your exercise and your nutrition here at this age, there's a really good chance that you'll carry that into adulthood, which does bring us to exercise. We've talked about it before. American children do not get enough exercise. We talked about this, I think, in 2 different chapters already. There's all kinds of benefits for exercise, and we'll talk about this a little bit later on, but just as an example, some studies have shown that it is just as effective for depression as pills are. So exercise just as effective for mild depression as pills are. Exercise is linked to attention, memory, goal-directed thinking, and creativity. So again, it's not just a physical thing, it is also a mental thing. Exercise actually changes the structures of the brain. So something to keep in mind. Parents and schools are going to play an important role in if a child is exercising very well or enough. And we've talked about modeling here. So one thing you can think about is that parents, they do modeling for all kinds of things. You just don't actually realize that you're doing it. If you exercise and your kid is aware that you are doing that, maybe they see you doing that, that is something that they may internalize, and that's something that they may model. Life models me doing things all the time because, we talked in an earlier chapter about how kids, look up to parents. They're like these omnipotent people. And so Leif, he will model me because he looks up to me. And so if he sees me exercising, that's something that he may internalize and do it himself. So something to think about. And last thing on this, screen time. So it's going to lower activity levels and it's going to lead to obesity. And we've talked about it before, and it's getting worse. We're more addicted to our screens than we ever have been because we have mobile devices that we're able to take with us everywhere. So something to think about as a parent, how much you want your kids on screens. The next thing that we will talk about are kids with learning disabilities.